Live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Welcome to Fox 12 Now. I wanted to bring that up there. That is a live shot of Portland. Weather's a little bit different than it was, a few days ago, but still not a bad looking shot right there. Again, this is Fox 12 Now, and I am Greg Nibbler. Thank you for joining us. We are live streaming here every weekday starting at 1 p.m. Pacific. We are on YouTube, Facebook, our website, and our apps. So lots of places to find the show and join the conversations that we get to have here. Right now, though, we're going to be talking about women in wine, in particular sparkling wine, and an event that's coming up this weekend. That's a whole lot that we're going to be covering. And to do that, joining us right now, we have Jeanne Feldkamp from Corollary Wines. And Jeanne, thank you very much for joining us here today. Really, really appreciate that. And, excited to talk about wine. That's always a great subject. But let's start with your story and how you got into this.
Yeah, absolutely. So my husband, Dan, and I founded Corollary Wines in 2017. We focus exclusively on traditional method sparkling wine. So sparkling is all we do. And it was really something that just kind of stemmed from our love of sparkling wine, is where it started. I grew up in the Beaverton area, so we were visiting this area a lot to see my family, and we were visiting wineries, and we're just so impressed by the quality of the wine and the community out here. And at some point, we started kind of looking around and thinking, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Blanc, all the perfect raw materials are here. This is such a great climate for growing sparkling. We started just thinking more about, why isn't there more sparkling? There were some great sparklings coming from Argyle and Rocco and Soder and some of the sort of the OG producers in the Valley, but we weren't seeing as much as we expected, I guess. And so we started kind of going down the path of looking into how we could get into it.
I mean, that's a huge step right there from appreciating it, understanding, maybe there should be some more here, to jumping in and actually doing it. That's a big leap. So what was it that pushed you over the edge to finally do it?
Yeah, it was I would call it a long, slow, slippery slope. So Dan and I both used to work in the tech industry. We lived in San Francisco for many years, and we were startup people. And so in a startup, when you're interested in a new idea, you define your MVP, your minimum viable product, and you start kind of testing an idea. So our version of this for the winery was that in 2015, we went to the farmer's market. We bought 300 pounds of apples. And then we tried to make some sparkling cider in our garage, because the process is basically the same as making traditional method sparkling wine. And so we just wanted to see if we liked it. And that was kind of step one. We did like it. The cider turned out pretty well. So we were emboldened and took step two, made some wine the next year.
So talking about sparkling wine in particular, for anybody to give a little bit more of a context as far as in the categories of wine, what is it that makes it sparkling wine and stand out from the other ones?
Yeah, so sparkling wine, obviously bubbly, but there are a few different ways to get bubbles into wine. And the way that we do it is just one of the three ways. So we do traditional method, which is where you are doing a second fermentation inside every bottle. So it's a bit of a longer, slower process than either forced carbonation or the method that they use to make Prosecco, where there's a pressurized tank. But for what we do, we ferment wine the first time in barrel. And then we bottle the wine, and we add just a little touch of sugar and yeast to each bottle, which kicks off a second fermentation inside every individual bottle. So it's adding just a touch more alcohol. It's also adding a lot of flavor and texture, and we age it for several years that way, and then we disgorge before release. So it's a little more of an involved process.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, as you mentioned, this is such a big growing component of wine, and having that in there and doing all that extra work for it too. So looking at sparkling wine now, how do you see that growing within the industry?
Oh, sparkling is really growing as a category. I think people have really, it sounds funny, but people have really discovered sparkling wine as a wine in the last few years, as something that you pair with food. I think for a long time, there was this sort of largely held idea that it was for toasts and it was just sort of for a celebration, and then you moved on to wine at dinner. But sparkling wine is amazing for food. It just pairs so well with things that are salty or, have some acid to them or some fat, and it just kind of cuts through richness. Sparkling wine is such a great food wine, and we like to talk about food pairings a lot in our tastings, because we do this whole portfolio of sparkling wine that can pair with lots of different kinds of foods.
Well, and speaking of that, we're going to talk about an event coming up too, where we're going to be doing exactly that, pairing it with a number of different foods. Before we go there though, just talking about women in wine, which we brought up here at the beginning, which is kind of the theme of what this event is that's coming up, in particular in sparkling wine. But as a whole, there's even a Women in Wine Day coming up next week. So tell me about that, being a woman in the wine industry. What are the particular challenges that you've seen, and how have you seen the industry change maybe since you started in it?
Sure. I think, in any industry where you're sort of not, I guess, part of the dominant group, it's just representation. It's just imagining yourself doing the different things if you haven't seen somebody else do it. So it's really wonderful that the wine industry does have a lot of really amazing, powerful women who are great examples and who have been incredibly helpful to me as we've gone along. There is a really active community of women in wine in Oregon. There's an organization called Women in Wine, which really formally brings people together, which I'm a part of. And it's a very supportive community. There's a lot of knowledge sharing. We do a lot of events together. We sort of, always can ask each other questions. It's a really great community.
I love it. And this weekend, is an example of winemakers coming together and sharing what you do. And I guess tell us about this event that's coming up this weekend, where people would have the chance to actually go meet you and try out some of these wines and the pairings that you're talking about.
Yeah, this is going to be really fun. So we're doing a Women Who Sparkle brunch at Cafe Olli on Saturday from 9 to 2. And it is for winemakers. All of us make traditional method sparkling wine. So it's me. It's also Jessica West from Approachment and Harper Voigt. It's Shelby Perkins from Perkins Harder, and Kate Payne Brown, who makes Dolores and is a partner at Vinovate. So we will all be there. We'll all have our wines, and they all will be great pairings with the brunch.
What is is there a lot of camaraderie when it comes to the wine industry like that? I mean, just being an outsider, I don't know. Is it competitive? Is there camaraderie with your fellow winemakers? How does that all work?
I can't speak for any region aside from the Willamette Valley, because this is the only place I've ever made wine, but it's super collaborative here. Everybody really is working together. The four of us who are doing this event, it was, make a couple of phone calls and find some friends, and we're doing this event together. Everybody's very open with, ideas about what they're doing in the cellar. And we're all sort of always tasting each other's base wines and talking about, what we are doing or not doing, how we can make everything better. There's a sense that the rising tide lifts all boats here. I think this is sort of something that the early Pinot producers in the Willamette Valley really modeled for us. They all came together and sort of helped the Willamette Valley become known for Pinot. And I think the same thing is happening for sparkling.
But to that extent too, and going back to what you were talking about at the beginning, coming up here and not seeing a lot of sparkling wine being made, Pinot obviously is a staple up here now, but you're seeing sparkling wine come up like this. Do you think that it can get to that level where it's maybe rivaling Pinot?
Well, I imagine Pinot will always be a flagship for the Willamette Valley, but I'd love for sparkling to be on the same level. Pinot Noir is actually one of the main components of most traditional sparkling wine. So we use a lot of Pinot Noir. We're using Chardonnay, Pinot Blanc, Pinot Meunier, and those are the grapes that grow really well in this area. This climate is just perfect for growing grapes that hold on to acidity, which is really important for sparkling.
What are the things for somebody who maybe hasn't tried a lot of sparkling wine before, who wants to get into it? What are the things to look for to try to determine, I guess, what your specific flavor is, or what you really want to go for?
That's an interesting question. I mean, sparkling wine is wine. So at the bottom line is like, are you enjoying it? Is it something that you like? There's a huge range of flavors that can come through in a sparkling wine. So some of them are really sort of bright and citrusy and lively, and that kind of thing pairs really well with, say, seafood. Some of them with a little more age typically have more of a sort of a toasty brioche note to them. And that can be really lovely with something like a fried chicken or a macaroni and cheese. So I think it's a question of exploration and kind of determining what you like. And I think that's the fun part.
Well, let me ask you this. You're here now. You've been successful here creating wine. You have this event coming up. How do you feel now after all this time since leaving the tech industry to where you're at now? Do you think you made the right choice?
Oh, 100%. I mean, look behind me. This is the vineyard. And, that's obviously the best place I've ever worked. It's great. I actually really love the seasonality of working in wine. You have a real sense of time because every season of the year, something different is happening. And so there's this sort of connection to the place that you're in that I never really had before that I love and I love to share with people.
What do you think is one of the most important things that you've learned in this process of creating wine?
Ooh, sparkling wine is all about patience. It takes at least 4 years, start to finish, for us to make a bottle of wine that's ready to release. So you really have to be patient, and it's a metaphor for life, I guess. You put in a lot of work up front. You hope that everything is going the way that you want it to, and if you keep going and hold the faith, it can be really beautiful in the end.
That's a tremendous amount of patience that I don't think a lot of people would have. So I appreciate you having that, and for you, having that patience and creating all this and talking about this event, just to bring that back together. What is it like for you when you're at something like this and you get to see somebody try your wine for the first time?
Oh, I love a light bulb moment. I love seeing people take a sip and be surprised and delighted. It's absolutely the best part of what I do. When people see that sparkling wine is more than one thing, when it's, they have this moment where they realize that it's something they can sort of work into their life and it can be part of their everyday enjoyment of life. That's really satisfying to me.
Well, again, the events this weekend, I'm going to give everybody the details on that too. But aside from that, how can they try your wine? How can they get into sparkling wine? How can people really involve themselves in this more?
So we, Corollary Wines, are opening a tasting room in May. So this is a rendering behind me because it's not completely done with construction yet, but it's on this beautiful ridge in the Eola-Amity Hills. So the valley, the rest of the Willamette Valley is out to the west of the ridge. And then our vineyard right behind me is kind of to the east. So you get a 360-degree view of what's going on. It really helps to sort of center you in the place and understand the context that the wine is coming from. So we're hoping to open in late May. And in the meantime, people can go to our website, corollarywines.com, to sign up for email updates. So when we have an opening date, they'll know.
Nice. And I just wanted to pull that up there so everybody could see that behind you and see the rendering. And for this weekend too, I just want to give the details. So Cafe Olli, 3925 Northeast MOK, and it's going to be from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. So you can go there and you'll be there and the other winemakers will be there. And you get to have that moment. Anything else that you want to share with anyone or let them know about?
I think we got it. I think we're excited to see everybody on Saturday.
Fantastic. Well, Jeanne, thank you very much for joining me today. Appreciate hearing your journey on it. Congratulations on the success, and have a great event this weekend. And looking forward to checking out the tasting room once that's open. So thanks for being here on Fox 12 Now.
Thank you, Greg.
And for everybody who's watching too, again, we are live, so I appreciate you joining us. We are going to take a quick break. We'll be back at 1:30. We have Eric Gordson from Around the House Northwest, which you're probably a fan of that show. He's going to be joining us to talk about the difference between battery and gas-powered outdoor equipment. There's a lot of opinions on that, so I'm expecting a lot of debate around that. That's coming up at 1:30, so you can join us right wherever you're watching. Just hop back into whatever platform you're on. I do suggest downloading the app. That's a great way to follow along. At 2 o'clock, we're going to have the latest person from The Masked Singer who was ejected from the show yesterday. So he's going to be joining us, so we'll be talking to him at 2. So lots coming up here on Fox 12 Now. Thanks for joining us. We'll take a quick break back here in just a few. I'm Greg Nibbler. Again, this is Fox 12 Now.